Hey everyone, this is Adam Ellenboss from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to take a look at the full moon in Leo, which is coming through tomorrow. So we're kind of taking today to prep for the significations of the full moon in Leo, give you a sense of what to watch for. Today, I want to talk about this full moon as a very queenly full moon in Leo. There's a lot of the energy of the queen, I think, present in this sign of royalty, and you put the moon there, and this moon is also configured to Jupiter very closely. I think one of the archetypes we're working with is that of queen energy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but among other things. So hopefully this will prepare you for the full moon. That's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your comments and reflections. It takes 2 seconds to press that thumbs up button. That really helps the channel to grow, and we appreciate it. You can find a transcript of today's talk on my website, nightlightastrology.com, where you can also check out some of the courses that have started recently. Last week we started a masterclass series on the fixed stars, and we started our year 3 program in counseling astrology. You can check that out. And then our moon circle, all of those began this month. Go to the website, nightlightastrology.com. Under the courses tab, you can check it out, and be sure to take advantage of need-based tuition if you are someone who wants to take the course but can't afford our going rate. And if you could use a little help, feel free to use that. And if you have any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. Okay, so a big week with lots of transits that we've been looking at, and one of them is the full moon in the sign of Leo. So here is the chart, and I'm going to actually advance this just a touch. Here we go. Here's the full moon in Leo. So we can see that the full moon in Leo is happening. Obviously, the full moons are always opposite the sun. So we are across the Aquarius-Leo axis, a bit of an opposition to Pluto, but you'll also notice that the moon is moving into, moving into a square with Jupiter. It is also, it is in the bound of Jupiter, and moving into the bound of Venus, by the way, right afterward. And then Jupiter is in the bound of Venus and the exaltation of the moon. So some really nice reception between the moon and Jupiter. They are certainly both playing to Venus, who is also moving into a trine with Jupiter from Capricorn. So very kind of earthy underlying structure with a lot of emphasis on Venus, which we've been visiting all week long. But there are 5 features of this full moon in Leo that I want to talk about today that hopefully will prepare us for those themes that we may notice coming through, especially tomorrow, Thursday, but also into Friday. And these themes, because they're very fast moving, right? The full moon comes and goes, but full moons stand out. You know, they as do new moons. You'll find that these are days of the month that not only the full moon, but whatever else is happening around the full moon will stand out just a little bit more. It's a little bit easier to notice or observe. That makes it worth it to pay attention to these these periods for us as students of astrology, as well as just people who are using this to observe and reflect on the archetypal nature of our experiences. Anyway, so these are the 5 archetypal qualities to watch for given the moon in Leo. The first thing that I notice right away is that Jupiter and Venus are giving shape to the moon in Leo, and that is because the moon at the time of at the moment of the full moon. Let's look at the basic dignities, right? The moon is in the sign of the sun, and we see that the sun is moving into the bound of Venus while also squaring Jupiter in Taurus, in Venus's bound and Venus's sign and the moon's exaltation. So in other words, and then you look at, again, the applying square to Jupiter from the moon, Jupiter being in the sign and bound of Venus. This means that there is a tremendous emphasis on Jupiter and Venus that this full moon brings forth. So what does that mean? Well, one of the great combinations we get when we combine the moon in Leo, a royal sign, a sign associated with things like kings and queens, and there's an archetypal meaning to that too, it doesn't have to be literal, that when we see that paired with Jupiter and Venus, we really get the feminine qualities and the royal qualities. I think, for example, of a personality like Oprah, or someone else that comes to my mind who literally has the name Queen is Queen Latifah. just the royal presence of like a matriarch. Like a matriarch could be a matriarchal entrepreneur or mother or head of a family or head of state, but you get the feeling of women and the feminine leading the way in this full moon. Now that could mean a lot of things because the feminine is archetypal as well as being associated with like a human like gender category. We're talking about the archetypal feminine, which is really something that we all experience, you know, in so many ways. So some of the images that come to my mind right away, I drew some tarot cards that I thought you guys might resonate with. One is the Empress. So the Empress is kind of like a Leo moon insofar as the moon is very earthy and sensual and nature-based. The moon speaks to the feminine, and it speaks to the world that we live in, the material world, the world of animals and nature and forms and pregnancy and you know, the kind of ecological matrix that we live in is very lunar. And when you pair it with a signification of royalty, one of the cards that you get is the Empress. And so this archetype is really important because at this time of the full moon, you may feel that you need to bring that forward in yourself somehow. It doesn't mean that you need to put on some theatrical display of egotistical grandiosity, right? Though you might, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a season for everything, but you get what I'm saying, that how can you tap into the Empress? The Empress is the one who she rules, but she rules with a kind of creative, tender, devotional, firm but gentle quality. How can you be firm, loving, affirming, encouraging, light, and sort of earthy and sensual, but also strong? You know, those qualities come to mind. Another queen figure that comes to mind is a little different than the Empress is the Queen of Wands. In the tarot, the Queen of Wands has a sunflower in one hand, a staff in the other, and the black cat, which to me is very magical. And so I think of the Queen of Wands and also the connection with the moon in the sign of Leo as the powerful, leading charm and magic of the feminine. There's a way, and I'm not trying to sound stereotypical. This is an honest to God truth. There is a way that my wife can get me from one stubborn state of mind or consciousness into a more agreeable one, and the only thing I can attribute it to is that she is very magical. And she has the moon in Taurus square to Jupiter in Leo. And I always see her as like there is a queenly magic to the way that I would say, and I think this is true for all relationships, right? It doesn't have to be like a heterosexual dynamic. It could really be any dynamic. That some partners have that I would call it it's like a relational intelligence and a charm and a kind of feminine mother magic. That you can just shift someone out of a stubborn or stuck place into a more amicable one through a combination of charm, magic, likability, humor, and attractiveness. You know, you can just shift someone through that power. And people like that, whether you're a man, a woman, however you identify, if you can access that kind of power when you're in positions of leadership or you are playing a cooperative role and you need to help move things and you have people who are stuck or recalcitrant kind of, I don't know, this energy of the moon in Leo is very persuasive and magnetic and charismatic and charming, and it has a kind of lunar queenly magic to it that can really shift things around through the power of personality and through a kind of a heart-centered likability. So, you know, tap into that or notice it around you. And allow yourself to be charmed by it if you're feeling stuck. You probably will notice someone or something in the environment is trying to help move you from a stuck place into one of, you know, feeling unstuck, feeling more cooperative. The moon is such a cooperative planet. And the element of the moon in Leo is about really like everyone's ego is okay here. Everyone can be along for the ride. And the Queen and Empress energy to me is radiating from this full moon, as the full moon in Leo, again, has so much connection to Jupiter, and everything in the sky right now points back to the dignities of Jupiter and Venus, who are also configuring by a trine. Trines are the nature of Jupiter. There's just...
Why? Like, why? Why did not record it? Why? Oh, it did.
There's something really good that happens right now when we move a stuck ego and cooperate. We allow ourselves to be charmed by the queen and the empress. Okay, well, the second thing I want to mention is that this full moon takes place in the first decan of Leo, which is the first 10 degrees. The ancient Egyptians looked at the divisions of the zodiac in terms of divisions of 10. So they took every sign and they divided every sign according to stars that were aligned in constellations within the various 10-degree divisions of the signs. And they mapped out alchemical, magical, and symbolic meanings for the 10-degree segments of all of the signs. So there's 36 of them because you get 12 signs with 3 parts each, so that's 36 total. And over time, much later, those decans started receiving the association when the tarot came about, which is, I think, 400 years ago at this. Point 4 or 5. What happened is the alchemical and magical hermetic traditions and the Kabbalistic, which is also a big part of the tarot, of course, they started looking at those decan symbolisms and making meaningful correlations to the major and minor arcana of the tarot. I find those connections to be very magical because the alchemical imagery of the ancient texts maps very nicely to some of the archetypes of the tarot. They're not perfect correlations, but they do share very interesting correlations that can help us think about the decans. So there's a book that I really like called 36 Secrets. Oops, let me hold it up right here. A Decanic Journey Through the Minor Arcana of the Tarot. And this looks at some of the classical associations between the tarot cards and those ancient decans. It's a really, really fascinating book. I really appreciate it. Anyway, Susan Chang, is the author, and she talks about, and other texts do as well. Another good one is 36 Faces by Austin Coppock. But anyway, she talks about this first decan of Leo as relating to 2 different cards. She actually has 3, but I'm going to talk about these 2. Strength and the 5 of Wands. So, all right, so Strength and the 5 of Wands. And these 2 cards are really interesting because the symbolism of them, they share something in common, even though it's not so noticeable. Sorry, something stuck in my hand. All right, so here's the 5 of Wands. And in the first decan of Leo, she really talks about the pressures that we face. Like, this is a card that, I mean, it looks like a bunch of kids fighting, right? But often you will hear this
Back to the time machine, eh?
A lot of demanding energy.
Back to the time machine.
Actions and thoughts and plans going in different directions at once, and all fighting to become, all these energies are kind of like demanding. They're kind of fighting it out with a kind of immature, maybe a little childish quality that's seeking to be dominant. This is most important. No, this is most important. Go over here, go over there. It's like having a very busy mind, a boiling pot in the mind, and all the different things are they're not very well organized. They're not working together cohesively, and they're seeking for some kind of integration so that we move from kind of childlike and childish to strong. And the other card is strength. This is about overcoming some of maybe our lower egotistical impulses. And here we can see, obviously, that we have a feminine character taming the mouth of the lion. And this is, to me, exactly what the moon in Leo is indicating, at least in part. The first decan of Leo speaks to, sort of needing to get our shit together and overcome various egotistical and childlike, busy, battling, disorganized, and chaotic qualities. And how do we do so? With a gentle but sovereign touch. I've got this. I've got this. Gentle, and this might be something we're doing internally, or it could reflect something in the external environment, but what kind of strength is required? We can't go into it acting like one of these kids, right, and get it done. We have to demonstrate a kind of maturity. And again, these figures come to mind. Notice the similarity with that figure taming the lion. Very interesting. So anyway, number 3 is the individual versus the collective, or
oh no, wait.
Now, in my mind, one of the things that we have in the sky right now is this kind of energy, 3 of Pentacles. It shows cooperative, earthy, building, construction, collaboration, and we get that from the fact that Venus is in Earth, Mercury and Mars are conjoining in Earth. They're all trying to Jupiter. They're all trying to Uranus. Everything is moving according to the desire to build tangible things, tangible results. Remember, Pluto and the Sun just entered Aquarius. They're ruled by Saturn. Gives us a kind of blueprint. Notice that in this card there's a blueprint. There's a kind of plan that's being laid out, a new image or ideal, and there's the earthy building or constructing of things. This is where we're at right now. Those energies are present. However, it is very important along the way, although there's collective things happening, right? There's things that are bigger than ourselves.
Come on, man, I
plans
suck.
and images and goals and, kind of almost like the need for multiple resources to come together in order to achieve something. However, a card, I almost forgot to include it. The card that I see as the opposite card in the tarot, at least one of the opposite cards, would be the Sun, which is just this kind of childlike, I'm special, I'm an individual. Look at these little kid's got a flag on like what looks almost like a unicorn. So my kids would love. This is really, when you look at these 2 images together, look at how bright and individual the Sun seems, and look at how collective and Aquarian the 3 of Pentacles appears. Sorry, I'm not balancing these cards, but it's kind of hard. There we go. Right? So the tensions right now between collective needs, projects, blueprints, plans, building, design, all rooted in Venusian things, beauty, desire, relationships, building things. Okay, but we can't lose sight of the fact that it is easy when there is an overarching plan and a vision and collaboration and so forth, that we can, somehow the individual can get lost. The need of the individual soul for individual expression. So watch for tension right now between what is individual or what is collective or ideal, a plan, a blueprint, something that's bigger than me, something that's a part of a group or a family or a community or a collaboration. But don't forget
why? Look, why?
In the process, the Leo moon is sort of demanding that there be an integration of the 2. What we love, what we protect, and what we are loyal to. I like this again as a bunch of the feminine cards, the Empress, the Queen, the Strength card. The moon in Leo brings up, what we love and what we're devoted to, what we're loyal to, what we think is worth protecting, where we find that there is a sense of joining with others or joining with someone in particular, or a family, or a community, or a home, or a living environment, or a culture. There's some sense of collective unity with the moon, because the moon, for example, in ancient astrology, the moon referred to the city, the village, the family, the tribe, the voters as opposed to the king or the queen, the city, the people. The moon in Leo, however, brings up this sense of what my personal heart finds personal emotional loyalty to, allegiance to. It's like you're, we've been watching Ted Lasso. It's like all of those footballers in the bar, they all love their team so much. It's very Moon and Leo. That my pride, my team. Ted Lasso at one point says, it's not our team, they just lent it to us for a while, because he's the coach. Moon and Leo has so much to do with what we're loyal to, where our affections and loyalties and devotion lies. Number 5
Right.
is the shadows. Where are we proud? Where are we selfish? Where are we childish? Although this card plays a big role right now, you could say. There's a sense of building things with so much Capricorn Taurus energy in the air, building things that are beautiful. The 8 leads to the 9, the sort of luxury and opulence, the Venus that's in the stars right now, suggesting what we're building or what we're designing or what we're desiring. But we don't want to turn into, proud, selfish, complacent, or we don't want to revert, back to I'm fighting over what's mine, my pride, the things that I am possessive or jealous about. So be careful of those energies of childlike battling and possessiveness and jealousy, those kind of shadow qualities of the Moon in Leo. So you don't want to be the dramatic queen in mythology that has all these underhanded ways of cutting down anything that she thinks will outshine her, or something like that. So just watch for the dark side of the queen, the dark sides of the queen archetypally as well, within ourselves, within the environment. So anyway, that's what I've got for you guys today for this full moon in Leo. I think that it's going to be, I think mostly a very positive one considering the nice configuration to Jupiter. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I look forward to catching up with you more tomorrow. All right, that's it for now. Take it easy. Bye.
This is the Aswan Quarry, located in the southernmost part of Egypt. Solid granite, and this quarry has been used for several thousand years. The question is, how many thousands of years?
Please.
These are the
Oh, that was a pretty
standard
good attempt.
techniques used by the dynastic Egyptians for pouring stone. And this as well. You see, very crude work, but what we're going to see is phenomenal. Harder. Now, honestly, that is how some Egyptologists think that the quarrying was done in the Aswan area. What we do find are these mysterious scoop marks, and what technology this was is still unknown, but it's clearly an example of lost ancient technology as compared, again, to the simple method used by the dynastic Egyptians of putting wedges in. So here we see side by side. On the right, you see the Egyptian technique. On the left, lost ancient high technology technique. So it's been described as scooping, but is it some kind of abrasive machine at work? Or something even more bizarre than that? Possibly a mechanism that emitted an energy field of some kind, destabilizing the quartz in the granite and causing the granite to turn into sand. Now here we're looking into the actual trough area of the 1,200 ton obelisk that was never completed. 1,200 tons. And here we get another visual look of the obelisk in its entirety, never completed. It's as if work suddenly stopped on this massive project. And again, these intriguing, even so-called scoop marks that we see in many different areas of the quarry, but especially where the unfinished giant obelisk is. Here you see the trough on the right side, and then here you see the trough on the left side. Again, with these very interesting even indentations. And this is called a test pit that goes down several feet. A human being could barely fit inside there, let alone try to work the surfaces. And again, these very intriguing, even marks, and the complexity of the Aswan quarry itself. So let's see how the people with hand tools are now making progress. Completely ridiculous to think that that was the technique. This again, you see where wedges were put in by the dynastic Egyptians and even Romans to break stone. And then a smaller obelisk that also was never completed. These intriguing scoop marks. You can see they were working on both sides, the left and right, and they were almost able to release the stone from the quarry. But something happened in Aswan that stopped the work. And the question is, what was it? Let's again see how the people using hand tools are making out.
There's nothing else here. Thank you.
There can be no question but that there was a very advanced technological civilization in ancient Egypt before the pharaohs. The reason this obelisk is not finished could have been the presence of this crack that appeared. And so, we're hopeful that in April of 2019 you'll be able to join us and
What is
see
this?
these
Why?
amazing sights for yourself.
Like,
Because
why?
being there is completely different than simply watching a video, which is kind of obvious, but that is the case. So, these are related books of mine at Amazon.com and also on my website. Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt, which of course includes a section about Aswan. Aftershock, the ancient cataclysm that erased human history. This could explain why the work stopped at Aswan and other places. Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, actually my very favorite of all of the pharaohs. And Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt, Volume 2, which again has an extensive section about. Greetings, this is Brian Forrester of Hidden Inca Tours, and this is the interior of the great Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Now, Jason here, who was on our recent tour in March 2018, is inspecting this giant granite unfinished box. And what's amazing about this is we'll see obvious signs of lost ancient high technology, like that saw mark you see in the center of the video. Now, I think on purpose, they pushed this unfinished box against a wall so that you wouldn't inspect these amazing saw marks. But what we see are two circular saws working, one on top, one on the bottom, obviously powered by some kind of machine, and rapidly cutting through this
Oh, come on.
7 out of 10
Like, why?
on the hardness scale, with diamond being 10. You can see
Aw, thanks,
the top
buddy.
saw started
Thanks,
to veer
Moonraker.
off course,
You're the man,
cutting
bro.
into the main part of
You
the
have
block.
now,
And then
you've
it
now
wound up
passed
snapping
ChatGPT again in top
half of
chatter.
the lid off. The lid
Just
was
kidding.
going to be
I'm just
from
kidding.
the same piece of stone from the bottom to be placed on the top. And now, right next to it, we see another granite box, and this is a different type of saw working, almost like a bandsaw.
I should
Again,
make ChatGPT
clearly working at high
a
speed,
command.
and
I guess that rap
uses
song
modern
is kind of
technology that would
a
require diamonds, a diamond
like praising me,
encrusted blade.
right?
Such a thing did
To give me
not
compliments?
exist during dynastic
Make a
times,
chatbot to randomly
so
give
we
you
have to
compliments. Can you imagine?
consider the idea that these saw marks are from a much older civilization that had lost ancient high technology. Here again, the multiple saw marks.
Pause after me.
And then somewhat nearby is
Sure.
this basalt box.
That sounds good.
And what you can tell from here, again, is that the box itself had to have been made using advanced technology. And this object was found by the dynastic Egyptians, and then they simply carved these shallow vertical lines into the surface, probably with relatively crude tools, possibly Bronze Age, maybe even iron, but the lightness of the lines means that they were done more recently than the shaping of the box itself. So for the moment, that's it for the first floor of the museum, and now we're going upstairs to visit the second floor.
Histories
And what we first encounter are a number of wooden sarcophagi. But as we go to explore these sarcophagi, we
I'm gonna add
encounter one of the most
other
enigmatic of
ChatGPT.
all
Oh, we
objects
didn't add
in
the
the
channel points.
museum.
We'll do that today on stream.
Aside from this 10-foot
That channel point
long
redemption.
wooden sarcophagus,
We'll do it.
of which
The
there
type
are
what
at
you want
least
me to
two,
add as a
were the
permanent
people actually that
command
tall who fit
in my chat,
these
in
sarcophagi?
our chat, in your chat.
But what we encounter is the amazing so-called schist
It will be
disc.
placed there in
We'll go more
permanent
into
history.
detail with
I
that
mean, I might veto it
after
based
we
on what it
observe
says, but
another one or two of the massive sarcophagi made out of wood
and if it's
from
offensive,
the dynastic period.
I will ban
Here are
troll
normal size
users.
ones, between 5
anyways.
feet and 6 feet tall. And then this huge one, which is 10 to 12 feet tall. Is it simply a symbolic sarcophagus?
Dude, I turned up the
So,
volume
back to the so-called schist
of the game.
disc.
I'm sorry.
called a
You just
schist
hear like
disc
shooting and
because the
AR-33 and
archaeologists
shit.
believe that it was made out of a stone called schist, but our geologist, Susan Moore,
But I agree, it was too quiet
who is an
before.
expert, of course, on stone, believes that it's actually metamorphosed
And now I'm
clay of some
recording
kind.
raw,
That would
so I'm gonna
mean
have
it would be
the stream
very, very dense,
video and the raw.
and also would be able to resonate.
I'm stepping up,
So
man. I'm
this
stepping up my
object,
game.
whatever it was, clearly rotated, but the strange thing is that the fins, 3 of them that you see there, don't angle. So it isn't apparent whether it was pulling or pushing
Thank you,
air or
Yoris, for
water.
the
Maybe it was
information
simply
in the
made to
Rixer
set up
for
some
the
kind of vibration.
video.
Unfortunately, it was found broken and very badly repaired. But again, you can see it's a very complex piece of work. And it was found along in a cache with 30,000 to 40,000 turned very hard stone bowls and plates that could only have been made.
How does it know it
using
rhymes?
lathes of some kind.
Like, how does it understand phonetically? Because my prompt was write a rap, like a hip hop rap song with lyrics, rhyming every line. How does it phonetically understand that? It's crazy, man.
The so-called shift disc. They put it here so that
Like,
the
to
sun
rhyme
shines on
in
it, I think
debt?
on purpose, so that it's very difficult to properly photograph. The fact that it's even still on display
With
is quite
adrenaline
amazing,
fed?
because it's
Like, come
very
on.
much
That's
an
just next
anomalous
level,
object,
dude. Adrenaline
which
fed
does
and
not
in debt?
fit
Like,
into
dude.
either the time frame or the technology of the dynastic Egyptians. And here are some of the turned objects. These, again, are likely quite hard stone, and you can see they're perfectly bilaterally symmetrical, so they would have had to have been made on lathes. Since the archaeologists are stating that these are from the Archaic period, that means that they were constructed prior to the invention of the potter's wheel. And a lathe is a far more complex machine than a potter's wheel. These could have been partially made on a lathe and then partially hand done because of the strange spouts.
AI lives matter? Oh no. I did not
This,
just say that.
fascinating
Better not
object that
PB
has
on this
5
fucking
lobes,
run.
Again,
All
appears
lives
to have been
matter?
made at least
Oh no,
partially
is that
on some
terrorism
kind of
too?
ancient lathe
Saying all
device.
lives matter? Because of ChatGPT, yeah. Oh, many people
And
are, and
these
many
are
people,
very
many
hard
things are. It's gonna
granite,
happen, dude.
Cyanite
But it's just,
and
it's
bowls and
gonna
other
take some
vessels
time.
that could only have been made again on
The only thing
lathe of
saving them is
some
like
kind.
unions. That's the only thing saving like
Now,
people
the
right
idea
now.
that that the lathes were operated by foot or hand are quite ridiculous, because in order to properly shape something like this, you have to have relatively high speed. So that means some kind of motor or engine.
I guess I'm not libertarian now, am I?
And those did not exist during the dynastic time period. And once again, many more of
Please,
these
like,
objects.
please.
There are approximately
Oh, dude, that was so
50
like
on
full
display.
health.
But
That
again,
was so
the cache
fast.
that was found at Saqqara, the number of objects found was between 30,000 and 40,000. Many of them were found damaged
It's gonna
or
happen,
broken,
man.
and others unfinished. And here are some pottery vessels. These are from the dynastic time period. So it's very interesting that the ones that were turned on the lathe are even listed as being pre-dynastic, and yet these relatively crude pottery ones are from the later dynastic period. So what it's telling us, including this fascinating object here, is that the history of Egypt is far older and far more complex than most academics will state. And that's why these objects sitting in plain sight are fascinating and show us that it's very possible that there was a high-tech civilization existing 12,000
It's just
plus
the
years
best.
ago in
It's the
Egypt,
best.
and that these objects were inherited by the later dynastic people.
Like, it's so perfect. How does it just completely
What was this
encapsulate
object? It
everything
looks like
going
a
on in the
flange
elite
of
right
some
now?
kind.
Like, it's just,
And note again that pieces are broken off. This damage appears to have happened in the very deep past, because a high percentage of these objects are broken. And they
Vocabulary,
were supposed to be
man.
found in a massive pile, all together in an underground space. These are boomerangs that are on display. Is it possible that the dynastic Egyptians invented the boomerang, or could these objects have in fact come from Australia, where the more famous history of boomerangs
Shoot her.
we know of? And then this very strange object.
This is fast.
Apparently
Yeah,
made
it's
out
not
of
that
very
fast.
hard granite once again. And the tool marks that we see where these
Yeah,
circles
dude,
are
I don't. No
appear
one
to
knows
be
why they're
machine
there.
marks.
But they don't.
What
They.
it's used
I think
or
one
what
does.
was
Do they go
used
outside or are they
during
blocked? I
dynastic
think they're
times
blocked.
before,
No,
I
the
don't
Queen's
know.
Chambers ones are
But again, it
blocked.
seems to be an
But the
object
King's
that
Chambers
was
ones are open,
inherited by
right?
the dynastic Egyptians. Notice the strange burn marks on it.
Really interesting. Yeah.
The burn marks could very well have come from a cataclysm that occurred globally about 12,000 years ago. It not only affected sites in Egypt, but we see ample evidence in Peru, Bolivia, and other locations that have megalithic structures. And why is it that all of the large granite boxes appear to have significant damage, especially in the corners? And now, this other object on the first floor has obvious tube drill holes. Again, this is granite containing quartz crystal.
Crazy.
In order to be
Oh,
able to
dude, you
produce
saw a lot of it. You learned a
cut
lot
through
about
this,
it. Nice,
You
man.
need to have at least
Yeah, dude,
diamond level
that's crazy.
technology.
Modern rubbish. Yeah, you saw. So you saw like the photos
And
of
now we're
the
in
the
what's called
rover or
the
whatever.
Amarna section, which is where we
And they
find a
drilled it, and
collection
then
of statues and
yeah,
other works
bro.
of Akhenaten.
Weird
Personally,
shit,
is
man.
my favorite of the
Like
pharaohs.
so strange and so.
Here he is portrayed as
so
being
perfect.
androgynous, possibly.
And I think they might be.
It is
I don't know if the
believed by
are they
some
granite lined?
experts on Akhenaten
I think it's
that he
granite.
physically
I think the
did look
entire thing is
different from any
granite,
other
is it
human
not?
being, and he
Because
simply
the
told
pyramid
his
is
artisan,
limestone, right? But they
"Portray
have
me as I
King's
am."
Chamber is granite, and the
That
Queen's
shows
Chamber is
that he had
granite,
a high level
and the gallery's
personal
granite.
confidence.
I think.
And here we have a classic
I don't know about the
portrayal
gallery. I think it's
of the
granite.
Aten sun god with
Oh, it's
Akhenaten
limestone?
with possibly an elongated head.
The vents, interesting.
There's Nefertiti on the left.
Thank you for telling me. That's huge, right? Because people have
And
interesting
here we have
water
the famous busts
or
of his
energy
daughters,
theories,
including Meritaten, who
pumps and
obviously
shit.
is shown with an elongated head.
But it's really interesting. 'Cause that's a lot of work,
Here,
man. It's a lot of
another
effort.
view.
It's a lot of
It's amazing
precision.
that only about a year ago
How many
we were
people
allowed
would
to
make something
start
so
taking
precise, something so
photographs and
small?
filming inside this museum. Before that, it was illegal. But that's what's happening in Egypt. So please consider joining us in April 2019. So these are related books of mine at Amazon.com. Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt. I'm going to be producing volume 2 soon of this book. Then Aftershock, the Ancient Cataclysm that erased human history. This is
Oh,
all
wow,
about
insane.
the Ancient Cataclysm 12,000 years ago. And The Enigma of Cranial Deformation by David Hatcher Childress and myself. And Akhenaten, the Heretic Pharaoh. So we're starting at the Temple of Hathor in Dendara, which is reasonably close to Luxor. And this is a dynastic construction. You can see the massive size of these columns. There are actually probably too many than are what are required. But the major
Man,
fascinating
I'm reading on a
things
tablet right
here
now,
are what are
and it's so
called
tiny.
Dendara
I
light
can't
bulbs.
change the size of the text.
Now,
It's
whether
like, why
they
Twitch? Like, come
actually
on,
are
help
light
me out.
bulbs or
Like,
not is very much up in the air. You can decide for yourself. But they're located in a
They're so
very
dumb.
small underground chamber, which takes special access
Terrible.
to get into.
it's way too small.
And this is what they
It's
look
hurt. Like,
like.
it's
There
actually
I
hurting
believe,
the eyes.
8
I
of
was gonna
them.
buy.
You can see they kind of look
I
like a
might
light
just
bulb.
do it and buy the TV on
But
top
other
of
people say that there's something else. Another
top of the
term used
TV.
is a
I think I'm gonna do
Crookes tube,
that,
which is a very
honestly.
simple,
Because then you can just
light
watch and play at the same time.
instrument. And here's a little
So it's not
video
that you're writing
showing you the
Moonraker. It's
detail
my
of
eyes.
writing
I got
here
to
is quite terrible, but it's a secret
gotta come
little
up with
chamber,
solutions.
very narrow access, and these are very curious sculptures. Then outside,
try this for a
we see what
bit.
are called keystone cuts,
I'm gonna try that for a
and
bit.
there are hundreds of them here. It's likely that there were originally either bronze or wooden clamps to hold these
It's a little bit better for
sandstone
now.
blocks together.
Still too
Probably
small.
wood, because that would take
If
a
I had
lot
it
of bronze.
like in my neck, I'm always looking
And now
down
we're
like
in
this.
the Valley of the Kings.
Oh,
These
if I
are
had the TV up
phenomenal
there, I can just literally
shaft
just do
systems
this.
That of course were used
Watch.
as tombs, but it's
You know what I
highly
mean?
unlikely that the
Okay, I think I
pharaonic
decided
people
I'm
or the
getting the TV
dynastic
and doing
people
it.
constructed them because they're hundreds of feet long. Here's a diagram of the burial
Oh my
place of Seti
god.
I, and you see the hundreds of feet that
Use the
these
washroom.
go on in the bedrock in the Valley of the Kings. There's no way that this could have been done with hand tools. They're way too long.
Cosmic
So you
ray
can see
imaging
this is
suggests there are
actually
more
quite
chambers.
close to
Yeah.
the
Oh, dude, you saw a lot of that
entrance
shit.
going
Yeah,
back
man.
out.
Yeah, bro. Hell yeah, dude.
And as I walk further back, these things
Yeah,
are
man, let's go down the
perfectly
rabbit hole,
quadratically
man.
symmetrical and just phenomenal. And this is the nature of the stone of the area. So you can see that it naturally fractures. So the idea that these were cut out with hand tools is quite ridiculous. They were probably done using some kind of high technology long before the dynastic times. Now we're at the Ramesseum. This is what remains of a 1,000-ton granite statue. And this is the base that weighs 500 tons. Now the quarry for this is hundreds of kilometers away. And what's most curious are the weathering patterns on the granite, because this is not the way the granite naturally weathers. The surfaces are peeling off, and here you see all these crack marks. It's likely that this was a site hit by an ancient cataclysm 12,000 years ago. Now this is the dynastic aspect, these columns with the giant sculpture in the background. And this is one of the artifacts that I also believe was hit by this cataclysmic episode that was probably solar plasma from the sun. Here you can see that the crystal structure has expanded and the sculpture is basically falling apart. This is not simple vandalism. And here again you see the crystal structure has expanded. Geologists have told me this would be the result of very fast, very high heat, thousands of degrees Celsius. And this once was a granite stone too, but you see it's basically the surface is falling apart. And here again, the surface is sloughing off. And all the scorch marks, the discoloration, indicative of high heat. And the greatest example are the colossi of Memnon, especially this one on the left. The front surfaces are far more damaged than the sides or the back, so it appears that the solar pulse or plasma struck it from the east at sunrise. You see here, the sides are not as badly damaged. Part of the arm has been ripped off of it. And you also notice the scorching marks of the heat. And again, the sides are relatively intact. And here's a short video of the magnificent colossi. They weigh 720 tons each. The one on the left is a single block of stone. The one on the right was actually badly repaired during Roman times. And as we start to walk around to the side of the sculpture, again, you see the front here extremely badly damaged. That could not have been done simply with somebody trying to vandalize it. So this is a scale model of what Luxor originally looked like. I believe it had 11 obelisks originally. And here again we see the overall layout of dynastic Karnak. It's one of the largest archaeological sites in Egypt and in fact the world. And this is the dynastic aspect, as in sandstone column construction. What we're going to focus on, though, is the pre-dynastic, much more ancient works in harder stones. So there appears to have been a cataclysmic event that happened at Karnak and other locations about 12,000 years ago. And in the case of Karnak, the path of destruction seems to have been solar plasma that went right down this route that I'm walking. Interestingly, it's 23.5 degrees off east-west, so the planet might have been in a different axis at that time. And what we're looking at is major destruction to the hard stone surfaces, such as granite and basalt. This groove is a power saw mark of some kind, indicating lost ancient high technology in the past. And here we get to have another look at it. Perfectly even. And also these core drill holes that we find not only at Karnak, but also other sites such as Abu Sir. And you can see this core drill is massive in size, very industrial, very ancient. And then we also see the granite surfaces here have basically been burnt off. This is not destruction by some tribal people. This is some kind of cataclysmic solar plasma, according to the theory of people such as Dr. Robert Shaw. And here again we see another example of it. The upper part of that column was in good shape, but the lower section is basically burnt off. And here again you see the interior of what's called the Holy of Holies, and it too shows scorching, and the stone is basically peeling off the surface. Now, in another location, we have this incredible object made of calcite. It originally was one piece of stone. That's the absolute truth. It was originally one piece of stone. It's been badly repaired in more recent times, but no one has any idea where the quarry for this stone is located. It's likely not even from Egypt. And here we see the interior. Again, it's been heavily repaired, but originally it was one block of stone, which is incredible. Here you see the detail of the outside surface.
Point redemption. The ChatGPT redemption. It's gonna be kind of high though. Might be to like $2,000.
Are not sharp angles, they're actually curved. So some theories are that this was a resonant structure.
I'm gonna get the TV, dude. I'm gonna get a 32-inch TV. 1080p. It's gonna be above my 32-inch CRT. It's gonna be fucking epic. I'm gonna have chat up there, and I'm gonna watch Star Trek again. Remember how we were watching? Remember why we stopped? I said we stopped. Redemption of ChatGPT. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. 1080p. There's one for like 180 Canadian dollars. Oh yeah. It'll be good. It'll be good for my health.
These surfaces are hugely damaged. Such as here, once again. And it's only in this direct area that this damage has occurred. So looking up, you can see that the affected area is from the surface up about 50 feet. The obelisk surfaces above that are still intact, but the lower surfaces have been affected, especially the eastern side. Eastern side affected much more than the other surfaces, so the force came from the east. And again, more of the amazing ancient core drill holes. Many different theories as to why they were done, why they were made, but they are at least as good, if not better, than 21st century technology. So again, we see another surface from the bottom up, badly eroded from some kind of heat. Upper area is not affected. And then as we continue along the path, going outside, still moving along this 23.5 degrees off east-west axis, again, you see the surfaces of the stone are weathered beyond that of normal, typical weathering by heat, by sun and rain, etc., but by some enormous force. So once again, this is not the normal way that granite, for example, erodes. And then we also have surfaces of calcite. So the enormous heat of this plasma strike affected the stones in different ways. Calcite, it broke it into several pieces, and you can see the surface there on the right is sloughed off, maybe because of crystal expansion inside. And then we also see two more of these curious ancient core drill holes. But why just take my opinion? Let's listen to geologist Susan Moore and Patricia Awian. Okay, we're here with geologist Susan Moore, and Susan is going to describe the phenomenon that happened to this stone, which is a granite-like stone, I believe.
These stones in this little area, they've been a puzzlement to us for numerous years. We keep trying to figure out what went wrong with these, why they're like it. And if you look at the rock here, you can see that the inner portion of the rock is a coarser crystalline size, and the outer side seems to have a finer crystalline crust. This is a fairly wide crust. This is a narrower crust. We just don't know why it's doing this. We actually see the same thing in a door pillar over here. And, unless we could analyze these things, we're probably never going to know. But what it looks like to me, and this is just sheer speculation, is that the inner portion of this has recrystallized, and as it cooled, the outer portion of it cooled down quicker and made this finer grained crust.
Okay, and that would likely be the result of intense heat.
Okay, we've been coming here since the first time we started exploring this hump on our own, and the keepers would bring us in here and say, this is the little holes. And the first thing we noticed is the destruction of this particular granite, or is it? I'm sorry. Diorite, yeah. This particular rock, you can see its destruction. The destruction's from the inside out. And what would cause something like that? So our theory was it was the energy of the site. But as we move in our research and our learning, we think about all the different possibilities. Yes, maybe the energy, that they're harnessing the magnetic current here, but is there another event from above that connects and hits this is attracted to this magnetic energy that causes this explosion? And as Susan would just explain, could create something like this that we can't create today with our energy.
Now here we are on the Giza Plateau in Egypt, of course. There you see the Great Pyramids in the background. That's what's called the second pyramid. Where we're going today is what is called the Osiris Shaft. And this has not been open for decades, if not hundreds of years, to the general public. But thanks to the new Minister of Supreme Antiquities, it's open if you want to literally rent the space for 2 hours. Now, it's not open to the general public. It requires a special permission and fee, and that special permission or fee costs between $2,000 and $3,000 for a 2-hour period. But we decided to do that for our guests, and we will do this every year on our tour from now on. So this is our group lining up. The door has been unlocked, and so gradually we're going to start moving in. So this is the uppermost level, which is in the bedrock itself. And here comes Jason, who was in our group in March 2018, clearly thrilled at what he saw. And now we move in. Again, this is the surface level, which is in the bedrock itself. And now we look down to the second level. Now, I'm not going to tell you immediately how many levels there are.
I added it for 2,500 points, but if I don't feel like doing it, or like there's like 20 requests, I may not. Or if there's like a bunch of requests, I may not fulfill them all. But I'll get to them within like the next few days, maybe. I might forget, but like honestly, I'm gonna do my best.
Nothing really incredible to look at in this space, except the fact that again, it's cut in the bedrock. And this is giving you a view from the second level with the ladder up to where we first enter. So this is about 12 of us out of a total of 30 getting ready to go down into the next level. But of course, because of the nature of the space, only a certain number could go down at a time. But this is looking down into what is the next level of the Osiris shaft. Again, cut into the bedrock. This could not have been done with hand tools during the dynastic period, with bronze chisels, etc. So now we're down in the next level and looking up to the level above, which was the small room. You can see the ladder on the right is very rickety, but a newer one was installed, which is on the left-hand side. And it is quite a safe experience to go down. And now looking into this room, there are 6 niches, and in 2 of the niches are large stone boxes. You can see the tool marks here in the wall. The lighting isn't that great, so flashlights, of course, were required. And then, again, this is one of these stone boxes you can see on the left. Very mysterious. This is moving into one of the niches. Again, 4 of them are empty. What has happened to the actual boxes, excuse me, if they were even in there, is unknown. Now we're going to focus on this, which is one of the boxes that has this very mysterious goo-like organic material on the surface and also inside. Next time we go in, I would like to actually take a sample in order to find out what that material is. It doesn't appear to simply be fire or smoke, because there's very little smoke on the ceiling. It seems as though something happened to whatever or whoever was inside the box, like an explosion of some kind. And then this is the other box, which is more roughly shaped. And inside, mysterious, massive damage. Again, as if the interior of the box exploded. Very strange. This isn't simply tomb robbers going in and trying to extract material from the interior. There's something, some kind of chemical process went in here, which is very weird. So again, looking up the ceiling, bits of splat, but not what I would call smoke or carbon material from a flame. Some other kind of strange phenomenon occurred here. And this box, supposedly the material is not granite, it's not basalt, it's not cyanite, it's not diorite. It's a stone that is not found in Egypt. So weighing in at a minimum of 30 tons, where did this stone come from? How was it shaped? And how was it brought down the shaft system into this niche? Here again you can see the tool marks, very similar almost scraping like tool marks. And then we're looking down into what will be the actual bottom level of the Osiris shaft. This is Yusuf Awiyan, who was one of our guides. The water that he's in is crystal clear, and he's standing on top of another giant box that's submerged underwater. So we are presently 200 feet minimum underground in the Osiris shaft. And there is underground water, of course, at Giza. But this water is crystal clear. So where exactly did it come from? And was it intended that this water be in there and be part of whatever process this structure originally performed? Because they call it a symbolic tomb, which is a really cheap way of saying we don't understand what this was made for, who made it, and when it was made. It's clearly megalithic, and thus it's likely at least 12,000 years old, and was found by the dynastic Egyptians. They did not construct this, because this possibly could be beyond 21st century technology that was involved, which we see also at other places in ancient Egypt. The clear signs of lost ancient high technology that was present long before the time of the pharaonic people. I believe the stone is called dacite. I might be wrong. That would be D-A-C-I-T-E. Interestingly, inside this niche is a recessed area where a human-sized sarcophagus could have once been. That could have been an actual dynastic burial, but the other two boxes and the ones submerged underwater were beyond the technological capability of the dynastic Egyptians, and thus has to be much, much
Yo,
older.
Rebel Gamer, I do. 1 sec, I'll be there in a sec, I do.
So as far as I know, only a handful of groups have been in the Osiris shaft since its opening in November of 2017. You can rent the space if you want. Minimum cost is $2,000 US. But that is what we do on each of our yearly tours, usually in March or April. We do very special things for our guests. We get access to other places which are very, very difficult for the common traveler or tourist to get to see. But that's why we like to believe that our tours are very special. And that's why there is a definite focus, not so much on the dynastic people, though that is
How
covered,
am I? I'm
but more
38.
on lost ancient high technology and trying to unravel who did this work, when this work was done, why it was done. And of course, you can learn more about this under tours on my website at hiddenincatours.com. So we did have a full 2 hours. Here's Yusuf climbing back out of the water again. And this was an amazing adventure because for many, many years I wanted to go inside this Osiris shaft, but of course it was always padlocked, and even
I'm
requests
38,
with
bro.
the authorities were met with deaf ears. They refused to even think about the idea of allowing anybody in there. But the new Antiquities Minister is very progressive. He understands that opening up more of these sacred ancient spaces brings more tourism, but what it also does is it allows us, the researchers, to try to unravel the secrets of ancient places, such as here on the Giza Plateau, as well as the other sites all the way from Tanis, which is in the Nile Delta area in the north, south to Aswan, where we find amazing things such as the unfinished 1,200-ton obelisk in the quarry at Aswan. So I hope you've enjoyed this adventure. We will definitely be going back to the Osiris shaft in April of 2019 on our very special tour, limited to 42 participants. And so these are related books at hiddenincatours.com and also amazon.com. Aftershock, the ancient cataclysm that erased human history. Lost ancient technology of Egypt.
I am
Lost
38
ancient
years old.
technology of Egypt, Volume 2, that thoroughly covers the Osiris shaft.
I've been playing GoldenEye since the year
The enigma of cranial
1997
deformation, co-written with David Hatcher Childress.
at my friend's house.
And Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, truly an enigmatic and fascinating ancient person. This is the famous step period of Djoser, or Zoser, and this is likely the first time that the dynastic Egyptians tried to build a large pyramid. But what do you make
How old are you,
of
lad?
this shaft cut into
You can be
the
any
solid
age.
bedrock?
My chat is
One
not
of many
ageist.
in this location at Saqqara,
We
and
do
it's
not
likely a
discriminate against
pre-dynastic
age
construction
here.
made by the master builders, because
We don't
also
discriminate
find these
against anything here.
on the area of Giza, as in where the Great Pyramids are
Only
located.
bad vibes.
So I'm not interested in the dynastic period, though it's a splendid history of ancient Egypt. What I'm looking for are examples of lost ancient high technology and catastrophic damage. So what we're seeing here are very hard stone surfaces that appear not as
Oh, let's go.
necessarily
This is so
vandalized,
fast.
but more likely were victims of a massive cataclysm of some kind.
Oh, fuck you.
Now, some of these surfaces you can see, the weathering is very strange. It's like the stones were hit with a very high heat. Not simple vandalism, though of course the structures would have been utilized as quarries during the dynastic times and also well into the Roman times. But what has happened to this little pyramid? It's not simply people taking hammers and trying to break it up. It looks like it has been struck by high heat. And we'll see many other examples of this that tend to support Dr. Robert Schoch's theory that plasma was ejected from the sun and struck certain parts of the earth about 12,000 years ago. So when you look at the top layer of the soil, see it's orangey, brownish looking. That's what happens to limestone when it's hit at very high heat. And here is another example. The top surface is there. And again, how was this little pyramid, which was immaculately constructed, how was it damaged so heavily like this? Again, my theory, and when we look at these burn marks that you see on the surface of the limestone, was that this pyramid and others were hit by solar plasma 12,000 years ago. And then later, they were found by the dynastic Egyptians
Double duck.
somewhere around 5,000 years ago. So let's go inside the pyramid here, Pyramid of Unas. Unas was a pharaoh. He was quite possibly buried in this pyramid, but he and his people did not construct it. The walls in this case appear to be granite on the left and right sides, and the lid, or ceiling, and that granite would have been brought from at least 500 miles away from the quarries at Aswan. And here again, the walls appear to be granite. If this was used for strength, that is a possibility. However, it may have been used for energetic purposes, which is something I get into in other videos that I've done about Egypt. And now we're going to go into the back recess underground here at the Unas Pyramid and have a look at this really intriguing box. And some people would say it's a sarcophagus, but the stone is very fine, tight-grained granite. And again, the box would have had to have been transported from Aswan, which is more than 500 miles away. And it appears that the lid was supposed to hermetically seal the box.
There's a lot of theories,
Now,
bro.
for most of their time, the dynastic people only had Bronze Age level technology. So there's
It's
no
shown
way
to
that
be
they
like
could
the absolute
replicate this
center
box, with
because they're
such
too big to
advances.
take to the British Museum.
So this,
Alright,
this pyramid
you're
was
now
recently
funnier than
opened up.
ChatGPT again, Moonraker. You now
There in March of
surpass it
2018.
again.
And now we're going to climb back outside of it.
That was a good
and
joke,
explore
though.
more of the Saqqara
Dude,
area.
I'd want to go to the British Museum so bad now. I've been to London,
So once
but I was a
again,
child
Tokyo's
before,
pyramid,
lol.
or Zo's
Not a child, but
pyramid.
like a teenager, right?
This could be a
So I didn't go,
construction done by the
like an
dynastic
idiot.
people, because you see it's relatively small stones that are stacked on top of each other. But I wonder where those staircases go. They appear to go underground somewhere.
I went to Stonehenge.
Maybe they connect with the ancient tunnel system, which is spoken of not
Stonehenge
only
is pretty
here,
cool.
but also throughout the Giza Plateau area.
It's
which
really
is
out in the
immense.
middle
It's
of
not just
buttfuck
the
nowhere,
area
though.
where you find the Great Pyramids, but it includes places like Saqqara, Abu Sir,
Really fucking random ass place.
etc. And now we look down and see the top level is dynastic, but below that, cut into the bedrock. So again, the bedrock cutting is probably a pre-dynastic work. And here we have another look at that. See, stacked stone on top of cutting into the bedrock itself. Now, here we are at one of my favorite places at Saqqara, and this is called the Serapeum. Again, notice that the upper layer appears to be burnt or scorched by heat. And as we walk into the Serapeum, this is one of the most spectacular places by far in all of ancient Egypt because of the mysterious boxes we're going to look at. The site was discovered by the archaeologist Mariette, I believe in the 19th century, and had been relatively unknown for a long period before that. It is literally underground. The dynastic people probably found it, but the constructions you're going to see could not have been done by the dynastic people. The first thing is, if the lights weren't on, this place would be pitch black. And so how could they possibly have quarried out this huge tunnel system that goes through it? There's no appearance of any soot or anything like that on the ceiling. And so the construction of this tunnel system, which appears to have been repaired, as you can see on the left, at different periods of time, the lighting must have been artificial in some way. And though that sounds hard to believe, you will believe it when you see what these boxes look like. It appears in some ways that the Serapeum is a climate-controlled atmosphere, because every time I've been there, and it's been at least 6 times so far, it's always about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, or approximately 20 degrees Celsius, which is a very pleasant temperature. It's not like something like the interior of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, which is very, very
I don't know if I'd
warm.
want to go in those places.
So the coolness
Like,
of
what if,
North
like, the
Dakota
Earth just
subterranean-
decides to collapse,
The question is,
right?
what are these
What if, like, it
objects
just
that we're about to
decides
see?
to just crush
How were
and
they created?
collapse? And you die.
What were they possibly used for? And why, when Mariette discovered
Why,
them,
like a
were
game?
all
Yeah,
of the
well
lids
said, bro.
Except one pried open. Very mysterious place. So the lid of this box weighs 30 tons, and the box itself weighs 70 tons. So that's 100 tons, and you can see the highly polished surfaces with the really crappy hieroglyphics done. Conventional academics insist that the
It's lasted
shading of
this
the
long,
box
yeah.
and the hieroglyphics are contemporary with one another, but that is completely
Yeah, the
ridiculous.
game is
It's
a
obvious that
N64
the
only has so
dynastic
much
people
processing
found these
power.
boxes in situ, and in some cases decided to carve hieroglyphics in some of them. Again, the stone likely came either from the eastern desert or from Aswan. Also, these recesses you can see in the walls
Do you
are
play on
larger
Xbox
than
or
the
PC,
length of the
Rebel
lid
Gamer?
of the box. So that means that the
Or Switch?
indentations were likely made so that
Or
the
XBLA?
tops, 30 tons apiece could swivel open. And again, the surfaces beautifully polished. The lid fits
I really
on
should really try to
so
go in left
tightly
strafe there,
that it
honestly.
would hermetically seal the box.
Yeah, I know,
There's
they're
no way
all,
a
I
Bronze
know,
Age
man.
culture
Thanks, man. That
could
makes
have
me feel
possibly
good,
done
buddy.
this work.
Really, because
So the
it
hieroglyphics,
could
of
be
course,
any run.
they very much could have done. They are very crude, and because of the granular nature of the granite with the quartz content.
Since we got into
that's why the
double-digit
lines are not
big room
straight.
tragedies, I
And why
decided
are
to
these
stop counting.
indentation areas polished as well?
Because it was just like,
It's very odd that
I
the
think my
original
point was
builders
made.
didn't make them perfectly flat
I don't know what my
surfaces.
point was, but it was
If
made.
this was a resonant box of some kind for high technology or some other function, it could be that the indentation
That I'm suffering to
were
get
for
the
final
times.
tuning of the box.
Oh well,
because
you know
the
what I mean?
acoustics
Like,
inside are absolutely astonishing, and the box loves the sound of the tone ohm. So again, the hieroglyphics are so
I'm gonna go
crude,
back to watching
whoever
Star
the
Trek
artisan
Next
was,
Generation.
could not even, or she,
when I get that
could
TV.
not even make a straight line because
That's the
of
plan.
the granular
That's why we
nature
stopped watching it.
and the content of very hard quartz, which is in the material itself. But the high polish of the surfaces is quite amazing. You would likely need to have something like diamond, dust, or powder to be able to produce a polished surface like that. And then as we turn, we're going to explore the fact that there are more than 20 of these massive boxes in situ in the Serapeum at Saqqara. Now, not only are they in the niches, but you can notice they're about 5 feet down into the niche. So the box would have to have been moved through the corridor, turned around a corner, and be gently placed downwards by about 6 feet or 2 meters into the niche itself. And again, intriguing that the interior walls are wider so that the top of the box could swivel freely. But how are you going to move a 30-ton lid by hand in such a narrow space? So we continue walking through the tunnel labyrinth system here at the Serapeum, and this little hallway connects up with the second long tunnel. It does not have niches in it, but it seems to be the way that the stone boxes were transported into the other tunnel system. And what we're going to see here is very much telltale as to what was going on in ancient Egypt before the time of the dynastic people. What we're coming up to is one of the giant boxes without the lid, and the surface is relatively rough.
Come on,
So
man.
it was shaped likely before it was brought into the tunnel system of the Serapeum. And this is like it's locked in time. Something happened at the Serapeum, stopping all work.
I don't have enough
Once
health.
again, there's no soot
I might have
or
enough
anything
health.
like that on the ceilings, and so candles or torches or whatever would not have been used in the fabrication of the tunnels or the movements of the boxes themselves. So artificial lighting of some kind would have to have been used, and this goes along with the fact that these boxes had to have been made utilizing high levels of very advanced technology, in some cases technology beyond our capacity today. So as we walked past the unfinished box that likely would have been finished once it was very close to its niche, we see in the background the lid that was to accompany the box. So it's very likely, and it's telling us, that the box would have been moved first, then the lid second. The box would have probably then been put into its niche, then the lid, 30 tons, put on top of the box. But how was the polishing done to make such a beautiful
So dumb.
seal?
It's fine, I didn't have enough health anyways.
Orphan lid here, and we're going to go back into the main tunnel to see where its companion box might be located.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I would go in down there.
So again,
What if it
this is
collapses?
the main tunnel, and here you can see the flashlights
I wouldn't do it.
glinting off a
Or like
smaller
in the
box,
pyramid? I don't think I'm
very
going in the
finely
pyramid.
crafted, with
There's no
some
fucking way.
crude hieroglyphics put on later. This is the companion box for that monstrous lid that we saw just previously. You can see it wasn't finally finished. So the
Yeah,
finishing
once,
would have
because
to
then
be
you
done
might fucking
in
die.
the niche itself.
It's like, you
And
know,
the
we have
car
this
is
like
a
1080p
massive
video
site,
footage
and
of
so
people
there
going
are
in.
other
It's like, why do I need to go in there
we visited.
and do that?
Not as impressive as the Serapeum,
I
but
don't-
still, if you're going to spend the entire day
You know?
at Saqqara, then it's
I don't
well
think so.
worth.
I mean, when I'm there, probably be like, yeah, but
So in the
I don't
case
know,
of
man.
climbing into,
I would go see, like, I would go to like Luxor.
which again appears to be lined with granite,
Yeah,
then you literally
exactly,
have to
dude.
get on your hands
I would go
and
to Luxor,
knees
which is like an outdoor
and
temple,
crawl.
you know?
There's a lot of dust.
It's like an outdoor
and ground up
courtyard.
limestone on
I think
the
that's probably
floor.
what a really cool.
So
I think
we'll
Luxor
definitely
was
have
the
to
place
watch
to
our
be,
clothes
man.
after this little adventure. But
The
that's what visiting
Ramses
ancient Egypt,
courtyard.
especially with us, is all about. It's seeing as much as possible.
I
and
forget what they
focusing
call
on
it.
The most mysterious ancient constructions that could not have been achieved by the dynastic Egyptians.
Like that has no like
that
ceiling, no
standard
roof, you know?
history is
That's pretty
very
scary shit, man.
short-sighted, and that there are thousands of years of time in ancient Egypt that are not documented properly.
Well, we're just
by
supposed to
standard
trust it's not
academia.
gonna collapse on us.
Now this box appears to be made
Oh, the
of limestone,
pyramid, dude.
which could have
There's
been
only like one
achieved
entrance and one
possibly
exit.
by the dynastic people
And
with
you're in
their bronze
fucking
tools.
Cairo, of all places on
What
Earth.
are the strange
Like,
marks that
man,
you see on the
I don't
stone,
know, dude.
just like
I don't
we
know if I
saw
would.
on the surface with the little pyramid of Unis. So where
It's
Now,
just a little
this is what
too
is
intense
called
for me.
The Valley Temple. That's
It's got
its common
bad
name.
vibes from it.
You can notice
I feel like humans weren't really supposed to go in there. I don't know.
excessively
It wasn't like a
weathered
place for
and
humans
eroded.
unless to escape some sort of
External surface
solar
has been
or meteor
removed over the
attacks
course
on
of
Earth,
time
you know?
to be recycled.
Then I could
or
see it
other
in like a
structures like
small
the city of
civilized
Cairo.
society, not in fucking
But the amount
2024
of weathering
Egypt.
involved is extremely interesting.
Yeah,
And here's
thousands of
a
years after it's
section of
built.
The outer wall of granite.
There's been no engineers to look at the structural integrity of whether it's gonna collapse or not. Like honestly, like not like collapse to the ground, but I mean just things getting crushed. There's so much weight. There's like they put granite on top of limestone. Like it's insane. A lot of granite.
2,000 years. Luckily, this section that you saw
And it's
there,
cracking, and it's
outer
all cracking. It's
granite
cracked.
core is still in place.
King's Chamber's cracked.
But
Those
here
those
you're
granite
looking at
pillars, like the
megalithic-sized stones.
horizontal, they like stack them, you know, like
The
Jenga.
granite outer
Like some of those are
facing
cracked,
was
man.
brought from
Like it's granite
most
that
likely
cracks. Once
the
it cracks,
Aswan
cracks the
quarry,
whole way.
which is about 500
Let's go.
miles to the south, or 800
Hi, Mom.
kilometers. And you're looking at serious tonnage
Okay.
here. And all of these stones interlock, or originally interlocked very beautifully
What's that?
without any mortar whatsoever involved.
Okay. Okay. Please.
And again,
Yes, thank
here we are walking along, and this is what's called the Sphinx Temple in front of the Sphinx.
Fucking
In
retarded,
fact, the
man.
Valley Temple and Sphinx Temple were
Not her,
originally
I'm saying. Whatever, not her. I just mean interest collapsing if go out. King's Chamber ends. I know. No, you can't though. You can't fit though, dude. It's too small.
The Great Pyramid in the background.
Lunch,
And again,
yeah.
you're looking at
Yeah,
serious
honestly,
tonnage
yes, that's
here
what
in
she was
terms of
asking
the
me.
limestone core. Blocks weighing 10, 20, perhaps
You're a genius.
40 tons.
I'm blessed. I'm a very
The
blessed
weathering
man.
is extreme, and we believe that this structure is contemporary with the structure of
But let's
the
not get into that.
Sphinx,
Let's focus on actually getting
meaning
the
that it
time
is
and not
12,000 plus
the
years old, and this is based on what
communism that we're
geologists
living through.
200 from around the world tell us, based upon
Oh, really?
the weathering pattern.
I didn't know it was that.
So this is inside the so-called Valley Temple. Notice the
Interesting.
amount of erosion on the bottom of this pillar as compared to higher up. we will see in other video clips. You can see the bottom half, roughly, seems to be heavily weathered. That may very well have been water. And here you see the interfacing granite stones.
5-year-old, yeah,
that
it's like really
originally
tiny,
were
isn't it?
very tightly fitting together. Again, the granite all came most likely from the Aswan quarry in Aswan
I mean,
itself.
why would anyone
Very
want
southern
to? People are
part
crazy,
of
man.
Egypt.
Why would anybody want to do that ever?
Again, notice the
People are
weathering
just so
on the lower
crazy.
section. And here, again, we're still inside the Valley Temple. You see how the blocks interlock almost perfectly. There was no mortar originally, but they've done repair work, and so they've done some filling in recent times. And this is the passageway that takes us up higher onto the Giza Plateau. Again, megalithic-sized blocks of granite. And geologists have told us that the amount of weathering here is much more excessive than would be under normal conditions over the course of, say, 2,000 years. So once we're outside, there's the second pyramid on the left, and of course the Great Sphinx. And we're going to go into some detail as regards to the weathering patterns on the Sphinx. But this is a walk back around the outside of the Valley Temple. Again, the exposed limestone surfaces, some of the external granite that was covering the outside and the inside.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't go in there. And then you'd be like packed with people, and then the smells, and
And another glimpse
I would freak out.
inside
I would freak
the
out.
niche of the Valley Temple, so we can see
I would have
the
claustrophobia
scale
and
of
freak the fuck
granite
out.
blocks. There you see a repair that could have been done maybe in dynastic times. The floor is granite, and the walls are, again, these multi-ton
Why?
blocks.
Like, how did...
So we go back outside, and then
Man,
turn
so
to the
dumb.
left to have a look at the exterior of the Valley Temple that basically interlocks with what's called the Sphinx Temple. So they were originally one homogeneous structure. Now these massive limestone blocks were taken out of what's called the Sphinx enclosure. So whoever made the Sphinx cut out these multi-ton blocks in order to shape the Sphinx enclosure and shape the Sphinx itself. Each block was taken out, of course, individually, and then locked into the one that had been taken out prior. And these vertical weathering lines are the indications of precipitation, and precipitation on such a scale has not been seen in this part of Egypt, geologists tell us, for at least 12,000 years. The head, of course, has been recarved during dynastic times, but you see the chest of the Sphinx heavily eroded, and there with the paws we see a lot of reconstruction that likely began during the time of Khufu. Now this shows the difference between the bedrock and here blocks in between the front paws of the Sphinx. And then this wooden walkway which is in between the front paws. And again, a lot of reconstruction has been done to the Sphinx over the course of possibly 4,500 years. You can see relatively modern rebuilding and then much older. And then the bedrock itself. You can see that this is one of the back paws, and it clearly has been reconstructed in relatively recent times. as compared to the weathering of the Sphinx enclosure. Again, major emphasis on the vertical weathering. Because that
What, like,
indicates
why again?
And if you
Like,
didn't
it's like I don't
know,
even.
there is an entrance near the very back end of the Sphinx. There is a ladder inside. So there could be a labyrinth of shafts and tunnels under the Sphinx and the entire Giza Plateau. Once again, the vertical water weathering and the excessive and extreme erosion that we find at the Sphinx. Different layers are different hardnesses, so the softer layers were carved out much more rapidly than the harder layers. You see the undulating lines. And this shows you the extent of the Sphinx enclosure itself. So the Sphinx was carved out of the bedrock itself. And there are the blocks taken from the Sphinx enclosure to build the Sphinx and Valley temples. So once again, on the left, you see that's bedrock. On the right, those are blocks. So the story that there is an entrance to the Sphinx in the front is likely true, because if you look at the rectangular system of boards there, that section can actually be taken out. And so it's believed that the Egyptologists have discovered the underground tunnel and shaft systems that exist under the Sphinx itself, extending likely all the way at least to the Great Pyramid, if not beyond. On the left you saw
Why?
a bit of repair.
Like, why?
And this strange channel, which is really quite rough, but I never noticed this on previous trips. It's a channel that basically goes all the way around the Sphinx. Whether it was done during dynastic times or not is unknown. It's not very sophisticated. But just to emphasize one more time, the vertical weathering was precipitation. And it has not rained much around the Giza Plateau. Climatologists also tell us for at least 10, if not 12,000 plus years, making the Sphinx at least twice as old as the dynastic Egyptians. And there again is the entrance to a shaft with a metal ladder inside. Of course, it's illegal to go in there, but I filmed it. You can see. And more or less finally, once again, the extreme weathering marks on the limestone of the bedrock of the Sphinx enclosure. All of the repair work that's been done over the Sphinx over the course of up to 4,500 years. Some Egyptologists insist that Khufu was the one who constructed the Sphinx, but it's likely he and Khafre were the ones who did repairs. And this shows you again the transition between the bedrock and then these blocks of limestone and the rectangular section, which underneath is believed to be the entrance to the shaft and tunnel system. Now this strange location is called Tanis, and it's in the Nile Delta in northern Egypt. It takes 3.5 hours to drive
Wow,
to
crazy.
Cairo, and for the last 2 hours we drive through lush vegetation. And
That's crazy. You know they might do that too.
agricultural farmland. So the question is, why is Tanis seemingly devoid of life?
It's the only way
Why
of
is
money
every
allocation back to the poor
sculpture
class,
and obelisk and
back to the
pillar,
people
etc.,
make them as
smashed to pieces?
workers.
This is way beyond the damage of any marauding army or vandalism. This is cataclysmic destruction.
That's
We're
just
going to
peak
see
humanity, man.
lots
That's
of
such the
evidence
golden
of
calf.
Heat scorching
That's such
on
the story of the
surfaces
golden calf.
of a lot
Put
of
all
the
your money
stone.
into this thing.
Now,
They
most of the
praise
stone, which is located at Tanis, such as
this item
is granite, and it's likely
of
that
ego.
the granite came from the great quarry at Aswan, and Aswan is 1,000
It's such a
kilometers
pre-Babylon
to the south.
moment.
So how
Or
was all of
like
this
the
transported?
Babylonian
These are small pieces. Again,
Day of
notice
Judgment.
very strange erosion of the surfaces.
It's like we're in
The only
Babylon
piece
right
that
now.
seems to have been intact is this quartzite box. The hieroglyphics were likely done by the dynastic Egyptians, but it's clear that
Like
the
1,000% we're in
Egyptians
Babylon.
found
Like
the
a
site of
million
Tanis
percent.
in complete destruction, and so they decided to build there and recycle
We are beyond
what they
Babylon.
found. Now
We are
again,
cyber
is this
Babylon.
erosion natural or normal, or could it be the result of intense blasts of heat? This gives you the visual. Again, you can see that Tanis is more or less devoid of life, except for the odd thorny bush, like the one you can see on the right here. And when you walk on the surface, it's not like you're walking in sand or on dirt, but more like
What are you
flour.
doing? Like, why?
As if all of the nutrients was burnt out of the soil itself. This gives you an idea of the sheer volume of stone found at Tanis. Again, likely from the Aswan granite quarry, 1,000 kilometers to the south. And as you can see, every single stone shows incredible levels of damage. Archaeologists tried to put this sculpture together, but it does look like some
Should we
of the
crowdfund the
extensions of
creation of a
arms
pyramid?
were literally blown off. This fits in well with the theory of Dr. Robert Schoch regarding solar plasma striking the Earth 12,000 years ago. And this is another example. You can see that the right-hand side of that statue has been hit with at least 2,000 degrees Celsius of heat. Now, all of this stone was found by archaeologists in the 19th century underground. They had to dig down 10 to 20 feet in order to find Tanis. And here you can see that this wall section, in fact, was probably rebuilt by the dynastic Egyptians, possibly 2 or 3 or 4,000 years ago. And look at that slab of granite on the left where Irene is standing, massive. So this area may have been exposed during dynastic times, and they built that wall section. There are also an incredible number of obelisks and sections of obelisks located in Tanis, more than at any other location by far in Egypt. This would not have been a place where obelisks were manufactured because, again, the quarry is 1,000 kilometers away. So they would have been made at Aswan and then transported to different locations around Egypt.
Oh man,
But
this
also
is
what we
this is
know
so
that
fast.
the obelisks themselves are
Come on,
megalithic,
please.
and they were constructed in pre-dynastic
Oh, please.
times by a civilization
Please, this is so
that
fast.
clearly had lost
This is
ancient
so
high
insanely fast.
technology because the Bronze Age dynastic
Still fast.
people could not shape
Oh my god,
granite
please,
surfaces
no!
like this.
What is that,
They could
22?
etch in
Full health
hieroglyphics,
22, let's
but they
see.
couldn't shape sculptures
Before.
like this. Now here again, the bottom of the statue, we're seeing intense heat. This has been
Oh yeah, I like to see up there.
corroborated by geologists that we've had on location. And again, it looks like sections of that statue were blown off, not struck off. Here's another statue. You see the left-hand side has been melted. The sculptors would have made sure that the stone was very consistent and homogeneous before they started the sculpture, so it's not a flaw in the stone. It's a heat effect that happened to the stone in the very distant past. Again, a massive block of stone, at least 20 tons. Surface erosion is excessive. And just everything is broken on a massive scale. Vandals with hammers could not do this kind of damage. This had to have been done by some sort of natural external force that literally blew Tanis to pieces. And we also see evidence of this at other locations such as Karnak and the Ramesseum and other locations to the south. But it's here. Look, another obelisk section on the left. And the fineness and depth of this carving, again, appears to be machined, not done by hand. So we're looking at the possibility that even hieroglyphics are older than the dynastic Egyptians. When you look into the background, that is the original level that archaeologists found in this area. So they had to dig down in order to expose all of the stone. Again, look at the blackness on that stone on the right. That appears to be heat. So this has been an overview of Tanis, or at least this is what we were allowed to see. It's in the middle of an army/police base, and we were only allowed to see a certain section of it. I started to wander off and look at other areas. I was immediately told to come back. And so why they're being so secretive here is a very good question. Again, devastating damage. The stone is strewn all over the place. This is not a civilization moving in and taking over and deciding to destroy ancient structures. There's another obelisk you see in the background with Yusuf Awiyan, another obelisk section, and then another obelisk section. There are between 10 and 20, if not more, obelisks that were found in the area, all broken. And again, this surface appears to be machined, not done with chisels. So that is lost ancient high technology evidence. Another section of an obelisk with very deep carving into the granite surface. And of course, the stone has been lined up during the excavation times by the archaeologists. Here you see more sections of obelisks. And the new prevailing theory is that the obelisks were originally made not as standing monuments for the glorification of the ancient Egyptian rulers, but in fact they were part of an energetic system. They were the receivers of energy emitted from the power plants or energy structures that we call the pyramids, located around the Giza Plateau area. There's a perfect circular hole that could have been machined. And then we get to the tomb area. And if you look carefully, you can see that all of this stone was restacked during dynastic times. The giant blocks of granite were likely there originally. Then the dynastic people simply took stone from the area, especially this limestone on the left, and piled it up to create a tomb. Inside this one, we find a granite box. This likely was a sarcophagus. The roughness of the surface shows that it was probably done during dynastic times, because it's not that well done as compared to the finer craftsmanship of the older megalithic work. And then when we look up, we'll see that this top block has hieroglyphics on it. So clearly that was recycled from an older structure. The dynastic Egyptians did not move any material in terms of stone into the area. They simply recycled what they found. And their technical prowess was not much compared to that of the earlier lost ancient high technology civilization. Here again, we see a much larger box, which they would call a sarcophagus, with the top snapped off as if it was hit with an enormous force. And one last wander through the area of Tanis we were allowed to see, which was quite extensive. And again, you can tell this area was probably exposed and opened during dynastic times, and the stone was reconstructed, or the wall was reconstructed by the dynastic people. See the very poor work on the left-hand side. That's an addition during dynastic times. And the simple fact that this whole area here is devoid of life except for a handful of prickly bushes gives us a strong indication that solar plasma struck this area about 12,000 years ago. This is corroborated by Dr. Robert Schoch, who's a geologist, and also accounted in my book, Aftershock. Here again, we see more melted surface on this piece of quartzite. It is like a giant came in and just knocked everything to pieces, but it wasn't a giant. It was a giant force that came from outside of the earth plasma ejection from the sun, most likely striking at sunrise around 12,000 years ago. It could have been a series of events, not just one simple one-day event, but it could have taken place over the course of up to 300 years, according to Dr. Robert Schoch, that would have vaporized anything and anyone that was in this area. The soil might have been blown up into the sky and then came down and covered the whole site, because here I am on the original surface level. This is the surface that the archaeologists found, and in order to see the artifacts, you have to climb down, again, between 10 and 20 feet. And these mysterious men in black were with us. There were 4 or 5 of them. Very nice suits, sunglasses, automatic weapon hiding underneath his jacket. They were keeping a very fine eye on our activity, but thankfully we were able to film. So these are related books of mine at Amazon.com. Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt, Volume 1, which does not include Tanis. Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt, Volume 2 does include a thorough chapter on the Tanis location. Aftershock, the ancient cataclysm that erased human history. And Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, the only person who lived during dynastic times that fascinates me.
Look at that timing. Perfect timing.
Today what we're going to be looking at are megalithic structures in different parts of the world that I have been to. And I think that's important because some people do YouTube videos of places they've actually never been. And you don't really learn that much from pictures as compared to being on location. So what we're going to be looking at is ancient structures that show cataclysmic damage, not damage from an army coming in or something like that, but natural forces that destroy these sites. And the timeline we're looking at for these cataclysms is 12,000 years ago, which is the end of the last ice age. So, does anyone know where this is? Machu Picchu, that's right. I've been to Machu Picchu 69 times, and I'm always looking at the stonework. So what you can see here is you see that line, and notice the work on top is quite crude, and the work below is polygonal interlocking blocks. So some people would say, well, the Inca made a very strong foundation, and then they didn't need to make it so good on top, but that's not the case. The Inca found, the Inca found Machu Picchu.
Yeah, no more looking up like that.
Decided it was a
Every
holy
time I
site,
start
and
fucking
then they
streaming,
built
I
their
sit back
city
down. I have it right
around
here.
it.
Holy shit. It's gonna be life changing
And
getting
this
that
is the
TV.
obvious evidence of that, because you see massive megalithic blocks on the bottom, pulled apart from east to west by a huge earthquake. And this is what the Inca found, and then they built on top. So you notice the difference in construction? It'll get more and more obvious as time goes on.
Why? Like,
And
why?
also, Machu Picchu means the ancient mountain, or the ancient place. So they wouldn't be describing that if they had built the whole thing. They found it, and then they built there. Now, there are flood myths from 200 to 400 indigenous cultures that talk about the time when their world was destroyed. It could have been an island or a larger landmass. And what this coincides with is events that happened during the Younger Dryas between 12,800 and 11,700 years ago. Of course, Graham Hancock goes into this, Randall Carlson goes into this, and it was a major series of cataclysmic events that happened that destroyed most of humanity. And it was a force that came from outside of our solar system. There are different theories. Some people say it's a comet, some people say different things, but we're going to go through all of the theories related to that. So Plato, of course, with Atlantis. The timeline for the destruction of Atlantis is around 11,700 years ago. So he was describing actual events. Most academics will tell you he made up the story, but Solon, who was his teacher, learned it from the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians' record of time goes way, way, way back, long before dynastic Egypt. And so he described a city, not necessarily a continent, but the city of Atlantis, which was concentric rings like this. And what's great about modern travel and modern research and the internet is that some people believe Atlantis has been found. It's a series of concentric rings like that. And it's located over here in Mauritania. So you can see from here, it's called the Rishat structure. And you can see that the land to the west of it looks like it's sloughed off and has gone into the ocean. So it's possible that this is Atlantis that has been found. Not the continent, the city. And this is what it looks like. Plato describes it as having mountains to the north and then the ocean to the west. And there are unknown structures or unresearched structures that are located in this area. I know two people who have recently been there, and you know, who knows, maybe Atlantis has actually physically been found. So I believe what happened around 12,000 years ago is that our planet was hit by a series of cataclysms. And how can we explain properly the reason why our planet is tilted 23.5 degrees? It doesn't sound like that's a natural thing. It should be vertical. And quite possibly, what happened was this impact where the red dot is in Greenland. And that was only discovered a few months ago. You can see right up there where it says the Hiawatha Crater. And that was a meteorite that struck Greenland, and it had the force of something like 1,000,000 times that of the Hiroshima bomb. So that wouldn't simply have affected the local area. It could have shifted the tilt of the planet, and then the planet restabilized at 23.5 degrees. And that's where it's located.
ChatGPT, you've done it again. You've hit it. You've hit a home run yet again, ChatGPT. That's such a great concept. Isn't that like Chucky? It's kind of like the story of Chucky.
Also,
in some weird, sick, twisted way.
The megafauna of North America. At that time, about 12,000 years ago, the megafauna suddenly go extinct.
Fucking ChatGPT's so dark that like told the story of Chucky
but there were millions
in a politically correct way.
So the theory is, and the same thing with the woolly mammoths that were found flash frozen in Siberia. One day they're wandering around chewing on buttercups, and the next moment they're flash frozen. And so I think what happened was the planet shifted very rapidly, and that changed their entire climate. They went
Okay, I think this guy's wrong at what he's talking about right now. I think he's speculating and he's not right.
Immediately.
But I think he's right about a lot of other stuff.
And also ancient civilizations that suddenly disappear around that time period, including the Clovis people. So one theory was by Allen and Dallaire, and they believed that a giant comet broke up and struck the Earth in different places, causing almost total devastation. And the date, 9500 BC, or 11,500 years ago. I'm just going to use the ballpark figure of 12,000 years. And then also Barbara Hand Clow. She came up with a concept called catastrophobia, and she believes what happened was that the survivors of this massive cataclysm hid in caves in order to protect themselves from another impact coming, and that would be what we call the caveman period. And it took 6,000 years before they were able to come back out again, and that's when we have the rise of Egypt and Samaria, and what they called the first major civilizations, but it wasn't. It was a renaissance. Those that survived rebuilt, and they had lost most of the information from the past. So she calls the concept catastrophobia. And then Dr. Paul Laviolette, who is an American physicist, he actually believes that the core of our galaxy, which is a black hole, but it's not a black hole that constantly absorbs energy. Every once in a while, it has a burp, and it actually emits energy that would go across the galactic plane and wreak havoc. So that's his theory, the same time period, 12,000 years ago. And Robert Schoch, his theory is pretty close to that. He believes in solar outbursts from the sun that came out and scorched the atmosphere and caused the rapid melting of the ice sheets. That was the end of the last ice age. And it didn't occur over thousands of years. He believes it could have been as short as a year, that the waters of the oceans rose by about 400 feet to their present level. That would have submersed ancient civilizations living on any coast. And that again would be the destruction of Atlantis. It wasn't that Atlantis sank, it's that the water rose, and the survivors would have to leave and find somewhere else to live. So I absorbed all of those theories together to come up with this presentation. So according to Robert Schoch as well, the places where this plasma would have struck would have flash blasted any life form that was there. So the people, the plants, the animals would have been vaporized, and these places would not have been habitable for thousands of years, until thousands of years afterwards. And we're not left, we don't have the ancient people left behind because they all got destroyed, but what we do have are these amazing megalithic sites around the world that standard archaeology can't explain, even though they very much try to. So this example here is in Cusco, Peru. It's called the Coricancha, and you can see that you can't fit a human hair in the joints, and that wall is 1 meter thick. So it perfectly tight fitting from the front to the back. Now, the Inca were a Bronze Age culture, and this is basalt stone,
comes to
so
life
they could not have
and
built this.
starts roasting
Found it.
everyone.
And here, too, this is a site called Rachi, outside of Cusco, and you see two forms of construction. You have adobe on top, and then you have megalithic polygonal basalt below.
It's too good, man. It's genius.
Which
I
is
gotta
that?
sell these. I gotta sell these ideas to Hollywood.
So it's quite
man.
clear that the
Too much.
Inca found this and then built on top of it.
Roasting, come on,
And
man.
another location called the
ChatGPT
Sun
is
Cave.
using the word roasting in
again,
its vocabulary now as a
You see
verb.
these
Come on.
massive blocks that fit together perfectly, and then relative rubble on top. So this is the Inca
We're
work
too far
on
gone,
top
man.
of
Well, there's
the
no turning
megalithic.
back. We can't close
And
Pandora's box.
An even more obvious example.
Oh my god.
This again is the Coricancha. So what we're looking at, this is
How
the
can we even
original
compete?
construction
How can we
here,
keep up?
perfectly tight fitting.
Even if we
Then
just
the
spend
Inca
all our
show
times
up,
learning
and they
information,
put
ChatGPT
some of
already
these
has all that
stones back
information
together,
learned
but they can't
and
get the
cultural
big
relevance.
interlock. And then they run out of material, so then they build on top of it. And then the Spanish colonial is actually on top of that. And that's what I discovered the first time I went to Cusco, because I've been a builder most of my life. And you see this megalithic stuff, and you go, how would we do that? Let alone a Bronze Age culture doing it. And my guide kept saying, no, the Inca did it. It's like, no. And then here we have the first map of Cusco. This was done probably in the 1540s. And you see the thick walls, and then you see the thin walls. The thick walls are the megalithic ones that the Inca found, and the thin walls are the Inca repair work. Because Cusco means the center of the world. And so I think that's a description that the Inca found the center of the world. They didn't construct it. And the polygonal work. Every stone a different shape and size, interlocking perfectly. Now that would be incredibly difficult for us to do today. So it's clear that the Inca didn't do this work as well. And then you see the protruding knobs, which are very much a mystery. And here we see the Inca repair work. You see, they tried to put some of the stones back into place, and then they had to use some filler here, and then they ran out of material, so they used other stone in order to reconstruct the site. Is this becoming quite obvious? Good, because archaeologists will fight and fight and fight and say, no, the Inca did everything. It's like, no. But this is what Inca work is. You see, it's very much precision in the front, but there's a gap in the back. That's not that difficult to do. So they wanted their work to harmonize with what they found. And this is Sacsayhuaman. Some of the stones at Sacsayhuaman weigh 125 tons. And they still interlock perfectly. Any gaps are the result of ancient cataclysmic damage. And whoever these ancient builders were, they were also playful. Because you see here, that's the shape of a puma's paw that they integrated into the shape as they were constructing it. And then you see this really rough work, that's Inca repair work. And this is one of the last Inca palaces that was built. And it's made of adobe, mud, and rough stone. So if the Inca had the capability of doing the polygonal work, the royal Inca would have had a palace made of that. So it's not simply shades of gray, it's night and day, the difference in construction style. And now we are at Ollantaytambo, and that is an Inca construction. Once again, you see it's rough stone and adobe mud. And in the same location, we have this. This is also at Ollantaytambo. Those stones are incredibly, some of them weigh 65 plus tons, and the quarry is on top of that mountain. So they had to take the stone down the mountain, across the valley, and up here. Not that simple a feat. So obviously the Inca found this structure and then they did their construction on the sides. And this makes it obvious. Also, no reconstruction was done after the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors, because any sacred site like this, the Inca were forced to abandon it. So this is like a time capsule we're looking at. And Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu means the ancient mountain. So I think that's what the Inca called it when they found it. Because this, there's a lot of construction on top of this one. This is Huayna Picchu, which means the young mountain. So I think the Inca were distinguishing the difference between what they found and what they built. And then here, you see relatively rough construction on the left-hand side and perfectly interlocking work here, with the top two rows being kind of rough because that's an Inca reconstruction. And here again, huge stones on the bottom and rough ones on top. Now the Inca abandoned this site as soon as the Spanish arrived, and so it's like a time capsule we're looking at. And here, you see this, you see the damage here. So this wall on the right has sunk down into the ground by more than a foot. And I was there with a geologist, and she said that would be a huge earthquake pre-Inca. And then this giant stone, you see it's snapped in half. It's a huge cataclysmic event. And then we are at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia. You see these massive stones here, and then the relative rubble built on top of it. So this is the original, and then this is the construction done by the Tiwanaku culture. They found a megalithic site, and they rebuilt.